I hate most basketball shoes, and it's because of this right here, the feet. In fact, look at this picture of LeBron James and what it's done to his feet. Now, that being said, he is an example of great performance and health so far. However, I gotta imagine that's gonna cause some problems for him down the line when he's older. And then you can't tell me that having his feet like that doesn't hurt at least a little. Okay, so first thing to mention is I am not a sneaker hater. I'm a sneaker head. I used to collect sneakers galore, and I love the style and the look of the sneakers, the innovation, the technology, all that stuff. It's fun. But from a performance and health standpoint, there's a lot that's left to be desired, and I'm gonna give you 5 reasons why. The first is because of this right here. No, not my ugly feet, but look at the way they are shaped. Notice how this toe curls under this one, and this one curls under this one, and this foot's even worse with that toe right there. So one of the first culprits is shoes like this. The Kyrie is one of my least favorite for this aspect. I love it for a lot of other things, but look at how narrow this goes. This right here, you can see how that's curling my toes in. If I put it upside down and I put my foot on it, you can see how my toes have conformed to a shape of a shoe like this. And even this foot here, you can see this toe wants to go longer, but it can't. This one here wants to go longer, but it can't. This one here wants to and should be able to be wider, but it can't because of the shape of the shoe. To combat that, I get things like these toe spacers. You can get them on Amazon for cheap. None of this stuff is sponsored in this video, by the way, nothing I mentioned, but you can put it between your toes, and you probably won't be able to do that wearing any of those shoes because it's simply too tight. But when you're walking around bare feet, this can help, but there's also some other good shoe options. We'll get to those shoe options near the end of the video, but first let's talk about another bad aspect, this. Your feet should be able to do more than this. Now, a while back, Nike came out with the Nike Free shoes, which I thought were gonna be great. Problem with those is they flex this way, not this way, and these are even worse. Your foot is supposed to be able to bend back and down. Your shoe is stopping yourself from being able to do that. The third reason is because it's basically making you walk around like this, which is good if you don't have anything under your heel, but when you have a shoe on, you have something under your heel. And when you do that, these muscles here all get shortened and tightened, and you're not getting a good stretch like you should when you're normally flat-footed. In fact, that shouldn't even be a stretch. That should just be your natural state. And that's because of what you see here, thick cushion in the heel, and it tapers off and gets thinner towards the front of the foot. The next reason might be a little controversial, but hear me out on it, and I actually prefer this on most shoes, but it's how high they go. My ankle's supposed to flex and be able to move around in all kinds of different directions. It's like a ball and socket joint. Well, when you put a shoe up to that height and you crank it tight, you take away some of that movement. Now, yes, it can still bend a little bit, but not the way it naturally should. And now when your feet can't bend the way they're supposed to, that motion has to come somewhere, and then next joint up the chain is your knee. Is your knee supposed to be able to move in a circle like your wrists and your ankles? No, and it gets pushed up to there. And then if that can't handle all the movement required, then it goes up to your hips. And you're forcing those joints to move in ways that isn't completely natural. And then you got the issue of this right here. I'm not talking about the heel elevation, but all this cushion. Now, we're not naturally supposed to be walking on this kind of cushion all the time. That being said, we're also not naturally supposed to be walking on blacktop, hardwood floors and things like that. So I think a little cushion is necessary, but all this cushion is unnatural, and it allows us to feel comfortable to strike onto our heels in a way that's not natural. If we were in the wild or just anywhere barefoot, it's gonna feel a lot more natural to stay on the balls of our feet, number one. And you might say, well, that's not enough cushion, but for a lot of things it actually is, because number two, you have these arches. Look how they bend. That's your natural cushion right there that allows you to take in impact that can arch and then flatten to absorb the shock. So imagine for a second that you had some mittens on your hands to play basketball, but also now imagine those mittens are made out of concrete and your hands can't bend. How well do you think you're gonna be able to play? That's kind of what you're doing with your feet when we're talking about playing basketball. Your feet can't bend the way they should, they can't spread out the way they should, and I guess it's like having cushiony concretes because it's adding all this cushion you're not supposed to naturally have. So here's some solutions. Number one, just try to walk around barefoot more often so those feet can get some feel, especially if you can do that on uneven surfaces, so they really have to work. When you're on a flat surface, they don't have to do as much, there's not as much flex and not as much muscle contraction. Get some toe spacers. You can get these cheap on Amazon. They're great for that. I don't have them right now and they look kind of funny, but there's 5-finger toe socks that give you individual toe sleeves for each one of your toes so it can move like it's wearing a glove, not a mitten. And then shoe recommendations. For when your casual shoes like this are great. These I got for pretty cheap. They're affordable from Amazon. They're called Witten. There's other more expensive brands like Vivo Barefoot, Vibram 5-finger shoes that actually have the shoes have the 5 little toe sleeves for each toe, but these work good. They're nice and wide, as you can see, plenty of room for the toes, super wide, super flexible both this way and this way. There's no extra thickness here. There's next to no cushion. In fact, watch this. You can see my thumb pushing the sole out And they feel great and amazing. In fact, the first time you put on barefoot shoes and walk around, especially somewhere with uneven surfaces, it's gonna blow your mind how much sensation and feel there is for your feet that you're not getting by putting these bricks on your shoes with extra cushion. And then also when you're not on the court, doing things to stretch out your toes, stretching them back, trying to, and I can't do this yet because of too many years in bricks, but you should be able to lift your big toe and keep the other ones down, lift the other ones and keep the big toe down. You should be able to keep one toe up and bend the other ones down. I still can't do that, but even just doing this with all the toes is great. Bending them back is great. Stretching them back by forcing them back, stretching them down, working on making an arch with your foot. Those are all great exercises you can do. Stretching your calves by your typical calf stretches that you know. Stretching the front of your ankle by sitting on your feet to stretch those shins out, that's great. Okay, so what are some on-court solutions? Well, shoes like this, the Kyrie, overall are not very good. I do like that it has the rounded sole. That's a little bit more like your feet. As you can tell, we don't have a square, jagged edge on our feet on the bottom. It rounds off. So that part I like about the Kyries, but that's about it. These Witten shoes are actually supposed to be trail running shoes. You can find them on Amazon. They're pretty cheap and affordable, and they're actually pretty durable and have a little bit of support on the side, which a lot of these barefoot inspired shoes do not have. I've shot around on them and cut in them, and they actually work pretty good. I've heard a lot of the newer Kobe's like the NXT and I think like the 11 are pretty good. I haven't got those, so I can't say for myself. I also like a lot of these newer Converse All-Stars, especially these ones that look like the old school Chuck Taylors, but are not. And even the Chuck Taylors are not the worst idea, but they have a little bit of a wider sole, could be a little wider, but they're one of the widest in the toe box of all the basketball shoes I've tried, and I've tried a lot on and went to how many stores and left with nothing. You can see how I can push the sole out or in. So there is a pretty good amount of court feel there. There's not too much cushion. There's not too much heel elevation, a little bit. They flex pretty good this way, except for back by the heel. They flex so this way, better than 90% of basketball shoes, and they're pretty flexible up top. And a lot of people give me a hard time about wearing these in my videos because they look like old school Chuck Taylors, and they say you're not a baller because of that, but you know what? I like how they feel, I like how they play, and I like how my feet feel. In fact, I've had a lot of problems because of shoes like the Kyries being too tight up here and then cranking the laces extra tight because I didn't want to be sliding around in my shoes. Next thing you know, I'm having all these problems with my arch, my calf, I tore my Achilles, and I gotta imagine a lot of that was related to how I was wearing my shoes and the kinds of shoes I was wearing. One other piece of advice, go ahead and just size up your shoes another half size or more. That'll give you a little bit more room for your toes, but generally they don't get much wider. They're just gonna get a little longer, but at least it gives them more room to spread out. One thing to keep in mind is you wanna ease into this. If you start going barefoot all the time everywhere or wearing more barefoot inspired shoes, you're gonna feel sore in your arches, your feet. You might even think like, oh wow, this isn't good for me, because there's all these muscles in your feet that haven't been worked in how long because they're stuck like this. So you definitely wanna transition into it slowly. But go ahead, leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this. If you've ever tried barefoot shoes, if you walk around barefoot a lot, I'll see you in the next video.